Hey everybody, it's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. Assuming, like usual, that you can hear me. We're just finishing up our supper here in Claresholm, Alberta. It was a Perogy Dinner, courtesy of Let's Talk Alberta, and it looks like a full house, which is absolutely awesome. We're going to get started with the speaking part of this event right shortly, so please be patient and stay tuned. See you shortly.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me, even at the back? Good. My name is Lorna Guiton, and I live here between Claresholm and Staveley. Some of you know me, maybe some of you don't. And we're here tonight to have a conversation. Let's talk Alberta. Chris Scott has been touring the province with Cory Morgan to have conversation and to have your questions answered as best that they can. So we invite you tonight to be respectful. We will try to get to everyone's question before the evening's over. And I've known these guys to stay and have conversation after. So if you don't feel like asking your question in front of everyone, I know that they're open to conversation after. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Cory Morgan. Cory is the author of a book called Sovereignist Handbook. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's excellent. He also is a writer for the Western Standard, and he's going to have a conversation with us. So let's welcome Cory Morgan.
Oh, it's all great. Well, thank you all so much for coming out. I hope it's for more than just the pierogies. And boy, things have really been taken off. We're making history right now, guys. This is something new. We've already had a lot of inspiration, a lot of work, and a lot of disappointment. But I think we shouldn't have allowed it to surprise ourselves. You know, did we ever really think it was going to be a straight, easy road out? Did we ever really think the opposition wasn't going to find every possible roadblock to put in our way? They have, as we should have expected. I think most of us did expect it. We didn't know exactly which ways it was going to happen. A year ago from now, I wouldn't have guessed that it turns out we need to consult a minority of a minority to be able to ask a question of the majority. Welcome to the Canadian version of democracy. But then fine, we work ahead, we push farther, we do what we have to do. And we're over the target. Something I've seen in this last few weeks, particularly since in that bout of insanity, I started a third-party advertising group that took right off. But it showed that there's a massive amount of support out there. People were waiting, they were eager, they were ready to get campaigning, ready to get going. And now lots of other groups are getting rolling, and this is getting going. And I've been in politics and independent media for a long time. I got called the C word in more emails in the last 2 weeks than I did in the prior 20 years. man, these people are vile. They really are. And that's who we're up against. And they aren't trying to debate us. They aren't trying to reason with us or reason with the people in the middle. They're trying to shut us down. They're trying to shut us up. And, you know, every once in a while, I think we all have our moments of introspection, self-doubt. Am I on the right side? Am I doing the right thing? You know, it's only human. This one's an easy one. Because one side is not on the side of free expression, it's not on the side of free speech, it's not on the side of open discussions or asking questions or making a rational decision. They want to come from above, quash debate, and encourage authoritarianism. You can see that streak in them. So I know I'm on the right side. But we've got to push back. So the vitriol, it slides off my shoulders. I've been called many, many things. I've been divorced before. I've heard it all. But not everybody is as eager to take some of the flack, to take some of the headaches. You know, most people didn't want to get into a political mode. They aren't confrontational by nature. It shouldn't have to be confrontational. But we understand how important this is, that we have to take some of it on now, even if it means your neighbor's going to scowl at you. Your coworker might, give you a glare or a bad look, or maybe even stop talking to you. If that's the case, it wasn't really a good friend anyway. But this is such a personal thing, and this is what's been happening, and there's all sorts of ways they're trying to shut us up and shun us and shut us down. So that's why, of all things, I took on, at least with a third-party advertising group, and there's so much more that's going to have to happen with the campaign. But I wanted to specialize in these signs, lawn signs. People say, well, okay, that's one part of a campaign. You know, lawn sign doesn't change a person's mind. It's only a few words on it. And it's true. I've never driven to the polls and, made my mind up on the way to vote by which lawn signs I saw on the way. But what they do is allow everybody to give an open expression of support for the concept in front of their home. And that is a big deal, especially when they're trying to villainize us, when they're trying to shut us down, because they're trying to make it sound like this is a tiny fringe minority. They're trying to make it sound like people who support this are extreme or unacceptable. But as others get out there, as we get those signs on the lawns and Alberta flags, and you wear the shirts and you wear the hats, it all matters, it all helps. It doesn't change minds, but it opens the discussion. It makes people realize I don't have to be afraid to talk about this, that there's others that are like this. I want to see more of these signs getting on lawns. I think of the person driving home from work and they saw one sign on the lawn one day. That's interesting, Maybe a week later there's 2 or 3 signs. Maybe a week later they say, you know what, I'm going to put one out too, and I really want to talk to my neighbor about this. And not in a bad way. I just, wow, okay, there's more of us than I realized. But you see, people don't know that. If you listen to legacy media, you listen to the activists, you listen to the politicians, they make it sound like it's a tiny minority. Polls, they go up and down, they're all over the place. But let's just go with the modest middle of what we usually hear. Say it's about 30% strongly committed at this point, just for a ballpark. Well, that's nothing small. That's 1 in 3 people. If you're putting out a lawn sign, that means, sure, 2 of your neighbors don't like it, but 1 of them loves it. And how are they going to know? Because we don't talk about those things. Well, it's time to talk about those things. And you won't be afraid to when we start expressing it more. And that's the point of these gatherings. That's what Chris has put together. That's what's so fantastic. Because this is Let's Talk Alberta, and that's what it's about. When I talk about campaigning, I can go into all of the geekery of get out the vote campaigns and different forms of communication and advertising, and that's all important. I cover some of that in my book. But what I like to talk about at these the most is how do we move the people that we must move into the voting pattern that we want to become independent. Now, I know we've got this god-awful question facing us this fall. It's not what we wanted to see. It's not the up-down, yes-no question, but it's what we've got. And we're at a disadvantage in that the Federalists can afford to lose this and carry on. We can't afford to lose this fall. If we don't put in a respectable showing on that word salad of a question and get people to strongly support option 2 potentially, how long is it going to be before we get another chance? If we come in at that at 10%, 15%, ugh, we're back in the wilderness for another 5-10 years. So it's so important to work on this, because I've heard from people say, what's the point? It's non-binding. The government's fighting us every step of the way. Why should I vote for a referendum to hold a referendum? I know it stinks, but the option of doing nothing is worse. And we have to push with it. Keith Wilson said it well in a sense anyways. Maybe it was a bit of a blessing, because we've been doing really, really well this last year. The petitioning campaign was amazing. I've never seen anything like that in my political life. And it built a network. It trained thousands of volunteers in a way that prior politics could never do. There's this massive group of people now who already realize that the only way things change is by getting up and making them change by yourself. And also getting out there and learning how to be fearless, learning how to stand at a roadside stand while people throw coffee at you, or, you know, in the worst cases, butt a cigarette butt in a guy's face, or swear at you, or give you the finger, and you learn to shrug it off. Maybe not the cigarette so much, that's assault, but you know what I mean. And they got tougher. But they also found out it's not all bad. People made friendships. People had fun. People had events. And that's something I like them to learn in campaigns too. Campaigns don't have to be drudgery. They're actually social events. And a whole lot of people learn that. And it's going to be a lot easier to do that in the summer months rather than standing on a highway side when that minus 30 weather is blowing by you. It built a foundation. But what it didn't do, and I didn't see so much, and this is speaking from working for a couple of media outlets, and we both ran polls. I worked for Standard, I worked for Rebel. We didn't see the committed support for independence rise much. We saw it coalesce for that, say, that 30% that is definitely committed. That's most of the people in this room. And we've also got that 30% that's never going to move. We know that. But there is that 30-40%. Those are the critical ones, the ones we have to battle back and forth over, the ones we have to win over if we're going to win this. And they haven't moved. So we've got to change their minds. Building that foundation, that campaign base, this network, this social structure has been so important now to take on this next task. So how do we do that, though? We got to move that needle. We can't keep preaching to the converted. Well, coming to meetings like this isn't always preaching to the converted, for starters. This is another session to make yourself a better advocate, make me a better advocate. The Q&As, I learned things at every one of these meetings. Somebody will always throw a question at me I never thought of. And likewise, a lot of the people here are going to learn a lot of things. And that makes you better equipped to approach other people. Because this isn't like a political campaign where you've got a leader and a party and a policy set exactly. This is kind of unique. We're selling a concept, a vision, and we're selling a big change, a dramatic one. And I mean, we can't deny that it's a radical change we're talking about in the long run. It doesn't mean bad, it just means it's something big. It's not extreme, but it's not something people are going to take lightly when the time comes. So this pause, this mushy question does allow people, and that's part of why some of my signage has evolved into that Send Ottawa message thing too. Because it gives people an out to express their discontent even if they're not quite ready to go yet. Those of us who are ready to go, we know how we're going to vote anyways, but also we can move some of those there. Now we still, if we're looking to become independent, you're going to have to move those people to a true yes side before that real Clarity Act referendum comes, when that big commitment comes, that big leap. But it certainly bought us time and really opened that door to have those conversations with them. So it's been kind of an unexpected blessing, I think. Keith Wilson kind of put it out, because we might not, and we have to be a little, self-critical. I don't think we were ready for the big question yet. When we look at how, and it's catching up now, and a lot of people working, it's been great, but look how poorly we hit the ground running when the petitioning period ended. That, and I'm not going to worry about pointing fingers or how or whatever happened with it, but it does show that this wasn't an organization ready to hit a campaign that big. If we were getting rolling on a Clarity Act question and we spent a month spinning our wheels while Thomas Lukasik is prancing all over the province in his purring mobile, we've lost this thing before it began. So we needed a little more time, and we've got it. So let's make the most of it. So getting back to how we win these people, how do you win people on an emotional case? I've heard people talk about, people who watch the Jason Kenney, Keith Wilson debate. And Kenney, I'm more concerned about Jason Kenney than I am with Thomas Lukasik. Thomas Lukasik's just a weird creep with a corrupted past with the Redford Party. He puts people off anyways. Go around in your turtleneck and purr at people, Thomas. It only makes it easier for us. Kenny, on the other hand, is smart. He's a skilled communicator. He's a very experienced politician. He knows what he's doing. I liked the Kenny of the 90s who was with the Taxpayers Federation. I really liked the Kenny of the 90s who was with the Reform Party. But that dome disease gets them. He was in Ottawa way too long. The infection sunk into his bones. He ruined himself. He's not the Kenny he used to be. Now he's just trying to find a place for himself again. But he's using his experience and his communication skills and his knowledge on how to move people, and he's bringing it to the debate. So when you see him taking that tact in the debate, the reason he's doing it is because it's smart and because it works. And what did he do? He didn't bother with facts and figures, though he knows them all. He didn't bother with, talking about how we could fix things with it from within, because he knows we can't. He worked with fear and sentiment, purely on emotion. Why? Because it works. We know the numbers. We've made our minds up based on how badly we're getting it with equalization, how badly the Senate representation is, how badly our freedoms were violated during the COVID period. We know that. But that mushy middle still hasn't necessarily made their mind up yet on that. And a vote to stay, it doesn't matter what the person's motivation was, it's still a vote to stay. So if it was a sentimental one, it's an important one. So we have to approach people on that level. We're not going to have that, as I said, René Lévesque or organized campaign that's going to win people over that way. It's our job. This is a true ground game. And people have heard me speak before. This is what I go on a lot about. I talk about it, being ambassadors for independence. Because when it comes to something sentimental, something you feel, and it's important to you, or you're worried about, and you're scared of, the person most likely to move you on a decision on something like that is somebody you know, somebody you trust. And it doesn't have to be a deep relationship, but still face-to-face, a coworker, a family member, a next-door neighbor, a person you hang out with at the bar and the bar front at times. Those conversations, though, are the kinds of conversations that will move people away from an emotional attachment to something. I can talk harshly and coldly. Canada's just a contract, right? I mean, it really is. It's a constitution holding provinces together, and we're just looking to redraft the contract. Why should people get upset? Well, because emotions change things. A marriage is just a contract too, but tell your wife that, and you'll find out how solid emotions really are when it comes to that. So we've got to move people on that front. We do have to convince them. Why? The analogies kind of work. Why is it time for divorce? Why is the relationship no longer tenable? And we've got to do it through positivity. We've got to do it, though, by listening a lot. It's one of the things, it's one of my flaws. I'm a blowhard. I'm a media guy. I talk a lot. But I don't necessarily listen enough. When somebody's concerned, when you want to talk to them, you want to bring them over, the best way to do it isn't to tell them something, it's to ask them first. What are your concerns? Everybody does have them. What things would you like to see change? What do you think isn't working for you today? Let them start that conversation down the road, because different people might have different things that have them upset. It might not be ones that they share with you, but I assure you there's going to be something somewhere. And once you get that conversation started, you get that seed. People who start thinking it through do kind of realize that all roads to change lead through independence, because you kind of run into a dead end no matter every other way you do it. I don't like our representation. I don't like the fact that the Senate is just a sad joke, and we can't do anything through that second house. Okay, how do we change it? We got to change the Constitution. Okay, that's going to be a problem. Those of us here, there's a few of us look like we're old enough to remember Charlottetown and Meech Lake, and that took the whole country over for years. It went on and on, discussions, negotiations, back, forth, compromises, and guess what? Neither of them came anywhere close to changing anything. They didn't come close to passing. So how can we really expect big change under the system? We can't. But not every person thinks about that. They don't think that way. So you've got to start that conversation, lead them to that. And it could take multiple conversations. It could take multiple touches. So we've got to take on that personal responsibility, and that's where Albertans are so excellently well armed already, because that's the nature of this province. That's the culture of this province. We get dismissed as having no culture. That's not true at all. If the culture here was based on waiting for somebody else to do something with them, this would still be barren prairie out here. I mean, it was some tough people who built this province for us. Tough, tough people. And they were self-starters. They looked out for their neighbors, but they also looked out for themselves. They weren't waiting for anybody else. And that culture is still here today. That's one of the benefits of being in a frontier. And that's why we can get a grassroots movement with self-starting individuals taking it on as their campaign task and getting out there and winning that majority support without having a top-down party structure to do it. You couldn't do this in Ontario. They don't think like us in Ontario. I mean, they're doing well, and that's part of the issue, but I'm just meaning that culture isn't there. Ontario wants to be led. And it's easier to want to be led when you've got most of the representation while you're at it. We don't. But we've got to make that case. We've got to push against the opponents with us. And some of the things that Kenny went into, straight off the bat. And that's why I love having these Canadian flags up here. I really do. Because Kenny went right into the veterans and Memorial Drive in Calgary, where we venerate them and respect them. And we get that a lot. We get that implied. How dare you sully the memory of those who went before and fought for us? We're not doing that at all. My grandfather fought in World War II. It was with Canada, but he fought for freedom. It just happened to be Canada he was fighting under when he did it, as with the rest of them. And I absolutely value what he did and every other veteran at that time and every other Canadian who worked their butts off while their husbands and sons were overseas in those wars, and the people who built this. I am not crapping on the history of Canada. Canada has been good to me. Canada has been a good country. It's let us be prosperous. It's had the freedom where I can stand up here today and still push, even though we've got these hard presses against us. I'm not being locked up for it. We could do much worse. And we've seen examples around here. This country will lock people up if they put the wrong ideas out. So we're going in the wrong direction. That's the wake-up call. But we've still got enough remnants of democracy that we can work this from within. And that's thanks to the efforts of the veterans all the way back from World War I until some of them who just recently came out of the military. We talk sometimes, I like to point out the sad shell that is our military today, but I'm not knocking the service people within it. These are people making do with what little they can. We did a long piece in the Western Standard, and it shows we have more generals in Canada in the military than operational tanks. That is a bloated, top-heavy, embarrassing military. It spends more time making sure they got tampons in the men's room than making sure their service members are properly equipped when put into a dangerous place. This, again, I'm not knocking the service people and I'm not knocking the veterans before them, but I am going to point out that this is terrible. This is not good. This is not a healthy nation. This is not a sovereign nation if you can't defend yourselves. But we got to work on these things carefully, and people, again, with that sentiment, we got to watch the negativity. We're upset with Ottawa. We're upset with the system. We're not necessarily upset with Canada itself. And these are things we have to train ourselves a bit on because the terminology is important. We're not trying to harm the rest of Canada. We're just trying to save Alberta. And I personally, honestly believe that Alberta becoming independent would be one of the best things that could happen to the rest of Canada. They wouldn't feel really good at first, but in the long run, that would be the catalyst so they can reform the mess that they got to. And we aren't, we hear that from some of the others. Oh, people aren't starving, people aren't dying, you ingrates, you're in this great country and you want to, the time to change things is before it gets to the point where people are starving to death on the streets, before the crime is getting there, and we're already seeing the signs of it. Go into a tent city in any urban city in Canada today. And this is a culture that's fallen apart. This is rough. And there's a number of factors. Fair enough. Nobody saw fentanyl coming. I mean, that's just an addictive bomb that is laying waste to people, in every country. It's horrible. And most politicians are dedicated to trying to deal with it one way or another. I mean, socialists feel you can fix it with more drugs. That's not working out real well. But others are trying through treatment and so on. It's a big issue. But there's more than that. You want to know something really interesting when you go out, not too many people go in, well, we see it in every town now anyways, but I go to the Western Standard, downtown Calgary. Every Wednesday is my day in the newsroom. I despise going downtown. I'm also cheap, so I park about 8 blocks away because it's only $7 there, and then I walk all the way to the office. but I walked through some pretty nasty parts. And the passed out addicts, you see the other guys methed out and acting crazy and doing the weirdest stuff. They're all white or First Nations. And I'm not saying these are flaws with a race, but this is something we got to watch on when we're talking about the issues with our culture, because addiction hits everybody. A South Asian person can still be just as vulnerable to fentanyl. You know, Chinese people were certainly vulnerable to opium at one time. Why do we not see them on the streets addicted like we do with the others? Because they've maintained a family structure and culture. They don't leave it to the state to fix things when people fall awry. The community comes together and works to help them. They don't take the addict and kick them out, though sometimes you run out of options. These are, you know, everybody's got their different situations. But it's a cultural thing. It's not physiological. Anybody of any race can be addicted to some of those nasty things out there. So there's one of the elements that's harder to see, but on why we're kind of collapsing. Why don't we have that can-do thing? Why is this province not the ones that reach out then to help our people when they're falling? Because that's what compassionate conservatism is about. Not saying we want to adopt a lot of the things that from the people have come in through mass immigration. They brought a lot of bad cultural practices too. That's a whole separate discussion. But one thing that we've really allowed to happen was the erosion of the family unit. And that's been particularly bad in North America. And when we talk about those things, you get derided again as some old social conservative. You want to keep the women barefoot and the pregnant in the kitchen and all. No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that we certainly didn't see a hell of a lot of this stuff going on when we weren't getting divorced at the drop of a hat and when we weren't caring for our extended family like we used to. These are the kind of discussions that are emotional too, that you can talk to people about. These are harder ones, but they have to be felt. They have to be had. Do we want a good, healthy culture, a prosperous culture, a culture that maintains that attitude of helping ourselves and helping our neighbors? Because Alberta has that, but it's fading. So yeah, the people saying that we're not seeing all these evils and everything that we're seeing around the world, actually we are. We're seeing the warning signs, and I want to stop it before it hits the true hellscape. Now is our time to change that path. But we've got to move fast. And wealth-wise, you know, oh, look how poor it is in Africa. So what? I don't want to measure my prosperity by the bottom. I want to aspire to the top. Let's look at that. GDP per capita, I'm just going to give a bit of number geekery anyways, because people talking about prosperity, you know, gross domestic product per person. So basically the amount of wealth in the country. It doesn't mean your income, but the amount that's there per person. In 2014, I believe, it was 53,000 American per Canadian. And in the States, it was about 55,000 American per American. Now, in Canada, it's about 55,000 per person in Canada. It's 89,000 per person in the United States. How in 11 years, 12 years, have we slid in that general prosperity scale compared to such a culturally similar neighbor of ours when we're surrounded by the wealth, the resources, and what we have? Because again, this country is broken. It's on the wrong track. So no, we aren't living in the tents in the streets yet, but if that trend continues, that's where we're going. We've had a country that's tried to use mass immigration as a way to patch the holes in a leaking economy rather than actually doing the hard work of fixing it. And now we've got the consequences of that. So we have an opportunity. It's not happening as fast as we'd like. It never will be. We're impatient. We want out already. But we got to be pragmatic. We take the opportunities we have and work with what we've got. We can't let them cancel us. Look what's going on in Tabor with all I got was a couple of billboards with that simple sign on it. What a hornet's nest. And the attacks were immediate, trying to take it down. I was talking to others too on speaking tours I did with Tamara Leach and Sheila Gunn Reid, and we're getting our venues shut down because the cancel culture is trying to shut down our venues. We did one at Medicine Hat College where they were very courageous actually, and they wouldn't shut down. But they said, we're going to, we'll allow the protesters in the lobby so they can yell at you when you go into the meeting, which is fine. They kept security so nobody's assaulting. And then they sat there banging drums as hard as they could outside to try and drown out our meeting from outside. That's pathetic. They have the right to do that, I guess, but they have no case. They're afraid. They know they're wrong and they know they're losing. That's why they're trying to shut down the other message. They're not trying to debate us because they can't. So it lets us know to keep going like we are. I was talking to others about why am I having trouble, why are you getting so many billboards in Tabor? Well, I've been trying to get them in other places. I'm talking to other billboard owners, and as soon as they find out what we're going to put up, I don't want to deal with that. And even if they're supportive of us, and I don't blame private business owners, because you know what these jackals do? They don't just complain to the town, and they got lucky with Tabor that Tabor intervened. I got lucky that Tabor intervened. We raised another $10,000 from those idiots. But they will actually watch the other advertisers on that board. Oh, there's a car dealership, there's a hotel, there's a tractor dealership, there's this. And then they will phone all of those other sponsors. And they'll get their friends to phone all those other sponsors, and they'll say, we're going to boycott you because you're advertising on the same board with those separatists. And then all those advertisers phone the billboard company and say, hey, if you don't take that ad off there, we're taking our ad off there. And that's how we get shut out. These guys are insidious. Same way that they terrify hotels, venues, anywhere we want to go, get us chased from spot to spot. Committees, hotel managers, they don't want to deal with the grief. The only way to change that is to show that we're not afraid of standing up to it, that it's not something shameful. In fact, that these venues, hotels should be ashamed to try and bow to that. But we have to build the groundswell. We have to build the visible support. We have to show that this is mainstream. This isn't fringe. And that starts on nights like tonight in a room like this. And I'll let Chris talk in a bit here. We'll get on to a Q&A, but this is one of those steps towards getting towards that. So thank you all for listening to me for this first part here. And I look forward to letting Chris bend your ear for a little while. Everybody knows Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop Cafe, the main man running all these fantastic events. And he's going to explain a lot more to you why we're here tonight. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Cory. As always, you deliver some encouragement and some motivation, which we need now more than ever. Before I start, I want to read a little bit from this book right here so that you folks know that this is actually real. So this book is Clifford Sifton, Volume 2, The Lonely Eminence, and this is his memoirs and speeches from 1901 to 1929. If you go to page 93 in this book, you can find this on Amazon used, by the way. That's where I found mine. I'm going to read a short little excerpt here that includes a phrase that you've all heard probably a number of times. Sifton added that by no means was he doctrinaire on low tariffs. Only a flexible policy could meet the changing and varied needs of the country. Lower tariffs were naturally preferable. But if he saw legitimate Canadian industry suffering through foreign competition, when a slight change of 4 or 5% would save it from being wiped out, he was not prepared to say that he would not consider a case of that kind and consider it favorably. Now, I read that part to give you a little bit of context leading up to this. It should be added that Sifton's view of the future development of the Prairie West was largely agricultural. He would have liked to see the tariff encourage the establishment of some small industries in the Northwest, which was Alberta. But there is no doubt that he believed that central Canada would remain the industrial heartland. Quote, "We all desire, every patriotic Canadian desires," he told a Winnipeg audience in 1904, "that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and the workshops of Eastern Canada, and to contribute in every legitimate way to its prosperity." Clifford Sifton, Volume 2, The Lonely Eminence, page 93. That quote was one of the main reasons why I got involved in this conversation. As I explored and kind of went on this journey of learning about Alberta and Confederation and where we stand and why things are the way they are and what they could be and what opportunities we have, I've learned more and more that the original intention of Alberta's unconsensual inclusion into Confederation was not so that we would be part of a strong, united Canada. It was because Eastern Canada wanted the great trade of the prairies to enrich their lives in the east. And the more I learn about this, the more I realize that a lot of these policies that we've had issue with in the past all stem from that phrase right there, from that common thread in Confederation that the prairie provinces were never meant to have an equal say. We were never meant to have adequate representation in Parliament. We were never meant to have senators that could advocate for us and stop bad legislation. We were never meant to have the voice that's required in a democracy. And because of that, the great trade of the prairies has gone to enrich those in the east for 121 years here in Alberta, since 1905. The same year, by the way, that Norway and Sweden split peacefully and did all the things that any nation would have to do to become their own nation. And now Norway is probably one of the wealthiest per capita countries on the planet. So the foundations of Western Canada, of Alberta, they did not start with rooms of people like this gathering for a political purpose and deciding what their collective future would look like. Alberta and Saskatchewan, British Columbia was a little bit different, but Alberta and Saskatchewan were created by the Parliament of Canada through the Alberta Act and the Saskatchewan Act. It redrew some boundaries in the Northwest Territories, reduced the Northwest Territories to roughly half what it was then, created Alberta, created Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, rather than being a small little speck on the map, became a kind of a full-grown province. And I can tell you with certainty that there was no referendum. The people who were breaking their backs and toiling the land in the late 1800s, early 1900s to build the beautiful Alberta we have right now, they didn't get a referendum. They didn't get a plebiscite. The First Nations weren't consulted. None of those things happened. Parliament passed an act and said, you are now Alberta. Created Alberta with the responsibilities of a province and the rights of a territory. And it's been that way ever since. I really enjoy when my friend Shane Meikle joins us on these talks, although I think he's in Drayton Valley tonight, because he really digs into a number of the policies that Alberta and Saskatchewan have experienced that have led to this sense of Western alienation and Western lack of representation. Many of those things you can find in one of those trifolds at the back that we provide for people who want to know more about our situation. So this is all to say that, you know, the Alberta that we know and the democracy that we believe we live in may not be exactly what we thought it was. I believe that if a people are unable to self-determine, are unable through democracy to influence the governance and the laws and the legislation over them, that they don't actually live in a democracy. That doesn't sound like a democracy to me. And it's quite apparent when you look at our electoral map, our federal election results. The last three elections, if you're like me, you watched in awe as almost the entirety of Western Canada voted one way, and the election was called before our ballot boxes were even opened. I have a problem with that. For me, this conversation isn't about, it's not about taxes. It's not about pipelines. It's not even about state surveillance laws, which one just passed the House today, as far as I know. Somebody actually said to me, did you hear Bill 9 passed? And I'm like, what? Bill Nye, the science guy? He's dead? Really? And then, no. And then they explained that, you know, one of the bills that conservatives in particular don't like, that allows some state surveillance, unlike anything we've ever experienced before, passed the House today. Bill Nye is fine. Well, I mean, as fine as he can be. He's a little bit out there. So knowing these things, knowing where we came from, the situations around how Alberta became part of Confederation, what it's meant for us since then, how it's affected us, how some of this legislation was not just an accident, like the National Energy Program, that wasn't an accident, by the way. That was an intentional act to stifle the Alberta economy. As a matter of fact, the federal minister of finance at the time was busted on a hot mic saying it, saying that basically Alberta needed to be put in its place. We can't allow Alberta to become the economic engine of the country. And then came the National Energy Program. And what could we do about it? Really nothing. It devastated Alberta. People committed suicide. Businesses fled. We lost business. The economy was like in shambles. Has anyone ever heard the phrase jingle mail? Do you know what jingle mail is? The mail in the early 80s in Alberta was said to jingle in the postal carrier's bags because of the keys that people were mailing back to the bank for their houses as they were foreclosed on. And there's nothing we could do about it. It's one thing to live somewhere where you, from time to time, experience laws that are not your benefit, that don't align with your values. It's a completely other thing to be at the mercy of other people who impose those laws. If Alberta had a chance, or had the ability, or Western Canada for that matter, to vote down the National Energy Program in the 1980s, do you think we would have done it? Of course we would, but we couldn't. And there's been things since then. This tells me, seeing rooms like this filled all the time, having conversations everywhere I go, it tells me that we need to start talking more openly about these things. We need to start talking about real solutions. And no, the government giving you a little bit of a stipend check to help you with your ridiculous energy costs is not a solution. That is a Band-Aid, that's a bribe, it's a way to placate the people into believing that those providing the bread box to them are their saviors. But they're not. They're your oppressors. Because they don't truly want you to be free. They don't truly want Alberta to be sovereign within a united Canada. And when I say they, I mean all of them. If they did, they'd be doing some of the things that are required for that. You know, if our government truly believed that Alberta should be sovereign within a united Canada, they would have done the very first thing that sovereignty requires, which is collect our own taxes. Step one, the golden rule. He who has the gold rules. Why can Quebec challenge the federal government the way they do? Quebec in 1982 immediately passed a law saying that they would use the notwithstanding clause on every piece of federal legislation. They used it over 1,500 times. It didn't matter what the federal government said. Quebec said, no, we're not going to abide by your law, period. And they lived like that. They did it. When the Supreme Court strikes down Quebec's language laws because it's unconstitutional, it violates the Charter rights and freedoms, Quebec says, okay, in French. And then they change a paragraph in the legislation, they reenact it, and they get sued again. They're on the 5th time at the Supreme Court over that. They just don't care. How can they do that? If Alberta does that, the federal government says, well, you know, we'll negotiate this and we're just going to hold back your transfers while we do it. Well, how does that work out for us? How has that ever been conducive to any kind of real negotiations between Alberta or Western Canadians, for that matter, with the federal government? We cannot do it. So I'm here to tell you, if you believe that the status quo is not serving you and your family and your friends and your enemies, because we love them too, right? Appealing to governments or politicians who refuse to even take the smallest steps towards the sovereignty we need to change these things will not help you, will not help me. We need to start thinking differently. We need to stop this idea that talking about religion and politics is impolite. The two things that affect our life from before we're born to after we're dead and then into our entire eternity. How dare people tell us that it's impolite to have conversations about those important topics? And that's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. We need to start talking about these things. I extend invitations to the Forever Canadian crowd, to those who oppose us, to anyone who believes that my opinions are incorrect or my conclusions are incorrect. I invite them here, and I get it. It's a difficult thing for some of them to do. It requires quite a bit of courage to come into a den of lions, so to speak, people who maybe don't agree with you on everything. But I appreciate when people who oppose my ideas come here and engage in a conversation. I've met some people on my side of the fence, and my side, by the way, my personal opinion is that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. I've talked to some people on that side of the conversation who have tried to go to town halls that the other side puts on to hear what they have to say and ask some questions. And they're not even allowed in the door. Now, if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who believes that the status quo is the best thing for Alberta, and we have a question coming up that's asking, do you want to continue with the status quo or do you want to change? If I was on the other side of the conversation, I would want to talk to people like me. Because if I truly believe that the status quo is what's going to serve me and my family and my neighbors the best, I would want to change the hearts and minds of those who disagree with me. And that's what I want to do. I want to talk to people and ask them, what is it about the status quo that is so attractive to you that would have you turn down the greatest opportunity, possibly the greatest opportunity that's ever given to any group of people ever in the history of civilization, and that is the question on self-determination. What is it about the status quo that you find more appealing than for the first time in Canadian history for the people of Alberta to chart their own course? This is a very deep question, and the answer is very consequential to our future. And people just aren't talking about it. They're still saying, oh, I don't want to talk about that, it's too political. We have town councils, municipalities, who, by the way, do not exist under the Constitution. Your municipal government exists as a figment of the provincial government's imagination by legislation. That's why there's a minister of municipalities. Refusing to allow conversations to occur in facilities that you pay for. It doesn't matter what side of the conversation you're on any topic. We should be, at the very least, encouraged to use every public facility to advocate for whatever position we have on any subject. Because I can tell you with certainty that when we talk about things as people, when we sit around coffee tables at restaurants or cafes, of which the Whistle Stop Cafe probably has the best coffee around, and I encourage you all to go sit there and drink my coffee. Do you know what the result of those conversations is? We actually change the world when we talk to each other in good faith. And most of the time, we change the world for the better. Because we're talking to each other. Those who are affected by legislation, laws, and governance are talking to each other and sharing with each other how they feel and what they see. And it's not politicians talking at us and telling us what we need to believe. You need to support us because we're going to give you an energy rebate. You need to support us because if you don't, we might have a different government, and that government may not give you that food box with the spoiled, disgusting food that at least keeps you alive. So it's better to at least be alive than to try and advocate for change. This is where we are as Canadians. Fearful. We are cowards. Political cowards. We haven't had the courage to make the changes that need to happen. And we witness that at every turn. We have a movement that grows in Alberta. The idea of Alberta sovereignty is just booming. And then we have a politician ride in on whether it's a blue pickup truck or I don't know what anybody else rode in on, those little horses with the stick that people gallop on and jump over the things. There's a mental image for you with Jason Kenney, sorry. And all of a sudden, we forget. We forget that change requires courage, and instead we say, oh, you know what? Thank goodness this person's coming to save us because now I don't have to do anything, and if I do something, it's risky because my neighbors might think something of me, or my wife might give me the cold shoulder and not talk to me for a day. Oh boy, the peace and quiet. Sorry. So we abandon the courageous ambition that we have when we feel something that affects us so deeply, like watching a pastor get drugged down the highway and arrested, watching a herd of ostriches get slaughtered mercilessly, watching men, good men, sit in jail for years before trial while their lives disintegrate around them. These things make us feel something, and we become courageous, and then we abandon it the first time a politician runs in front of us. And we need to get over that. We need to change this. We need the courage to make the changes that are necessary to protect the values and the principles that make Alberta what it is. And if we don't do that, if we decide that we're going to let other people do it because it's too scary and we don't want our neighbors to think something of us because we have a blue sign on our lawn, or we don't want our neighbors to, well, doesn't often happen, but don't want our neighbors to think something of us because we have a red and white sign on our lawn. That doesn't really happen because the status quo is the safe bet. It's the normal thing, and it seems to be the side that is the only one that's acceptable in conversation. The ball's in our court. We are at a spot now in Alberta and in Canada and really across the globe. We are at a tipping point. We have never been here before. We have never had this much support for change in Alberta. We have never felt like this in Canada before. And I haven't experienced all of Canada, but I have some really, really old friends. You might even call them dinosaurs, like my friend Mr. Strankman. And we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to walk into a ballot box, and there's going to be a massive stack of paper there now. But one of those questions is going to be about our future, a real question. Are we going to pursue a change, or are we going to continue with the status quo? And no, it's not the question that many people wanted. It's not the constitutionally binding question that some would have liked, but it's an important question nonetheless. And no matter what side of the conversation you're on, your answer is going to affect your life and your family's life and your future for decades, probably for the rest of your life. And because that question is so important and so consequential, the conversations that precede it are equally important, are equally critical, regardless of which flag you hang from your window. The reason I have this flag here, the Canadian flag, is because I recognize and I am grateful for the blessing to live in a place where we can have these conversations openly. Even if the conversation means that we no longer wish to continue with the relationship that flag represents. I'm very, very grateful for that. I don't hate Canada. I'm frustrated with Alberta's position within Canada, but I love this country. I love what it meant to me when I was young, but that doesn't change the fact that I believe that Alberta has grown up. We have outgrown that relationship, and it's time that we self-determine. That's my opinion, and that's why I say I believe Alberta independence is not only necessary, but it is inevitable. And for those of you that disagree with me, there may not be many here, but if you disagree with me, I invite you to challenge me. I would absolutely love to sit up here on this stage with Cory, by the way, because I need someone smarter than me, and have people challenge my ideas and tell me why I'm wrong and have this conversation with me. Because at the end of the day, I want the best future for me and my family as well. And if I'm wrong, you sure as hell better get here and tell me. Change my mind. Because I am working very hard to make sure that this conversation gets to Albertans, to make sure that they have the facts. Those trifold things that we build, they have a whole bunch of facts on there. They're not telling you which way to vote. They're not telling you what you should do. They're telling you the current situation that we're in here in Alberta. And from there, you make up your mind. And if you believe that those stats and those figures and those points on those things point to the status quo being better, then you feel free to go that way. but let's at least talk about it. I should have mentioned this first, but I am also very, very grateful for the hundreds and probably close to thousands of people now who, when called to participate and volunteer for things like this, they're here. They show up at these halls. They've got the kitchens ready, the coffee's going, they're prepared, they're ready to work, they're ready to do something to help facilitate the conversation. I am so thankful for those volunteers. So please give a round of applause for all of the And I'm so thankful for you folks here tonight. Whether you agree with me and my opinions or you're opposed, it is awesome to have you here and for you to give us the opportunity to engage with you. We're grateful for that. So thank you very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break. It's probably closer to 15 because that's just the way we work. We're on like farmer time or something. And grab a coffee. I don't know if the tea water worked. I think something happened there. So coffee, maybe there's tea water now. There's more pierogies if you're still hungry. And then we're going to reconvene and we're going to have a question and answer period. And I really hope that you prepare some good questions for us. Whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your mind, we're happy to talk to you about it. If you're shy and you don't want to come up to the microphone here and ask your question, write it on a piece of paper. And we'll have a volunteer, just give it to them at the table or whatever. And we'll bring those questions up here and we'll read from them. We don't want to put you on the spot, but we certainly want to make sure that your voice is heard. So thank you very much. We'll see you in 10 minutes so we can get talking, Alberta.
just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta, it's up to me and you. When the front wheel starts to wobble, pull your truck on over. You might not be the only nut that's loose. You can't just ignore it or pretend that it's all fine. That shaky wheel is gonna cook your goose. Something's gotta change. Yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta, it's up to me and you. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, don't claim to have the answers, or the way to set back history's racing clock. But I know it's time to leave the couch, time to hit our knees, rebuild this country on a solid rock.
Good enough. There's stage lights, there must be a control panel someplace.
Let's see what we can do. But it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. You've heard that real insanity is to try to
You can take the mic with you. Yep.
wonder why you get the same results.
I feel a little off my game tonight. I got a little run down this week. Yeah? Too much going on? It's just those early mornings for that back truck thing. It's killing me.
You
guys can't do them at night, I guess, right? No, because the points to kind of hit it right from the news cycle, so those things are published.
gotta change.
Yeah, that's been good. I'll get used to it. It's things like Milk River get me right off. You get home to one and then I get up and I had that about a week and a half ago. I was right down.
Same is true in politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you.
Okay, everybody, I think we're ready for the Q&A. If we can just find our seats, we'll get to it. So what we're going to do, if you have a question, you can come up to this microphone right there and just have an orderly line. If you have mobility issues, then somebody will take the microphone to you. And again, if you have a question that you don't want and you don't want to be on the spot, just write it on a piece of paper, get it to one of the volunteers, and they'll get it to us.
I have three quick questions. Currency, citizenship, and then I'm going to ask about demographics. A lot of gray heads here today. What is the demographics like? Are the young people engaged? Are they picking up on this? Or is it just kind of my age group that is supporting?
Why don't you start with the currency?
Well, I'll start with the currency and citizenship. So an independent Alberta wouldn't have everything change all at once. It's not like Cory says, we wouldn't have a referendum and the next day everything changes. No, there's a period of negotiation. A lot of things have to be talked about. And by the way, there are very smart people and dedicated people working on some of these things right now. Is this better? Yeah. Oh. Sorry, it sounds really loud up here. Anyway, but the currency issue in particular, so a lot of these things are policy issues, and these are all an opportunity. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you exactly what Albertans will want or what we'll put in our constitution and how these things will look, but what I can tell you is it'll be the first time in history that we're able to decide for ourselves, right? So I have my opinions on what our currency could be or what it should look like. In my opinion, I don't believe that the Canadian dollar will do fantastic if Alberta pulls out of Confederation. I think it would probably be softened even more than it has in the last 20 years. So we have to think about that. I think that in independent Alberta, we would have to do something different right off the bat because we want stability, we want an easy transition, and in my opinion, it's a US dollar. There's 28 other countries that already use it. There's 2 countries that use it as their primary currency. And the United States doesn't mind if people do. It enables trade to be done easily, and 90% of our trade is with them anyway. It allows access to the global markets, all of those good things. So that's my opinion, that we should adopt that right away. But I'm also a sovereigntist. I believe that sovereignty requires us to have our own dollar, so we need an Alberta dollar. And my opinion is that it should be backed by something hard like gold, and that we should build our reserve at least equal to our GDP prior to launching our dollar. That's why I say that immediately we would adopt the US dollar, not immediately an Alberta dollar. If you look at what happened in the Asian financial crisis, a bunch of Asian countries had their dollar pegged to the US dollar. It wasn't really backed by anything. And there was some speculative and predatory investments that happened in the Asian financial markets, and it crashed their economy because they didn't have anything to back up their currency when they had that kind of pressure. The only country that came out of that with their intact was Hong Kong, and it's because Hong Kong has 105% of their GDP in reserve backing their currency. So they survived it, and that's something that Alberta would have to contemplate as well. But it really is, it's an opportunity to do better. If you don't like what's going on with our currency right now, if you don't like that our federal government is printing money and devaluing your currency, inflation's out of control, those types of things, what do we do about it as Albertans? Nothing. There's nothing we can do, right? So anytime someone asks, well, what are you going to do about currency? First thing I say is, what are we doing about the currency right now? Because it hasn't performed very well, and we've been unable to fix that. At the very least, an independent Alberta would give us the opportunity to do something different, and then it's us making the decisions, us reaping the benefits or the consequences either way. So yeah, it's about opportunity. And the second one was citizenship. There's no legal mechanism by which a Canadian citizen can be stripped of their citizenship. And that became apparent in the Omar Khadr case. Omar was stripped of his citizenship. He sued the federal government. He got his citizenship back and $10.5 million. You used to be able to lose your citizenship under something called the 1942 Act. And that said, if you fight against your country on foreign soil or against our allies, that you could be stripped of your citizenship. That's what Omar Khadr did. And the Supreme Court effectively overturned that legislation, which resulted in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying, once a Canadian, always a Canadian. Once a Canadian, always a Canadian. So there is no legal mechanism to take your citizenship away. And people argue, oh, well, that could be negotiated. And I say, good luck. I mean, there's Supreme Court precedent that supports a Canadian is a Canadian. The Prime Minister has said it. Not only that, but if Alberta became independent after a successful referendum, how would they know who to take citizenship from? How would they know who voted yes and who voted no? They wouldn't. It's a private vote. So they couldn't do it even if they wanted to.
Sure, I'll hit that third part with the demographic part. And we see that a lot, and having gone to a lot of political meetings, it's nothing unique to the independence movement that you see a lot of gray hairs at these. It's actually kind of unique to politics. If you've looked at pictures online of Thomas Lukaszyk's gatherings, I think the age demographic's actually a little bit older at his than even here. Sheila Gunn-Reid always answers it best, because we get that question asked a lot at these, and she points out her daughter's very conservative, good farm girls, very much independent supporters, but she also said they wouldn't be caught dead in a meeting like this. There's things they'd rather be doing. It doesn't mean they're not engaged. It's just not what people at their age typically come out to. And that's just the nature of younger people. But something I think a lot of us, if we were involved in the petitioning, saw, which was really striking, and it surprised me, a lot of young people signing the petition, a lot of people coming out. They aren't coming to the meetings like this. Some do. There's exceptions, of course. But we saw a great number of young people taking part, signing they wanted to move this process along. So they're there. And we've seen that in the polling and the breakdowns as well. Young people have been becoming more conservative in general. We saw that in the federal election. Part of it is the hopelessness of the situation right now. The chance of buying a house, unless your parents have handed you a large amount for a down payment and some help, virtually impossible. Paying down student loans. That's that thing I was talking about, was that creeping, poverty that we do have, even if people don't realize it. I think the reason it mostly, and I understand that there's a lot of exceptions, but it was mostly kind of the boomer group that voted the Liberals back in. That was a particular bunch of them that are all like, I've got mine, my stuff's paid off, I don't want to rock the boat, I'm just going to keep things the same. I think most of the people in here might be in a similar situation, but we're thinking, yeah, I'm fine, but I want to make sure my kids and grandchildren do better, so I'm going to change things. But the demographic shift has been more to younger people than we'd thought before. And just finally, one other thing was the changing of where people get information. And young people don't watch CBC. They don't watch CTV. They aren't consuming that crap. And so they've been getting it from other sources, modern sources, independent media, online. That's mixed because there's a lot of misinformation online, but let's not pretend the CBC isn't packed with misinformation as well. And that, I think, has allowed them to cut through a lot of the BS as well, and has been a contributor as to why they've been showing themselves to be a little more conservative these days too, because they're not getting exposed to that garbage now.
Hello, my name's Bob. Canada's pretty divided, but I think that we stand a chance. I was joking with the guy earlier. I'm sitting in a room full of cowboys and farmers, and I haven't seen any brawls yet, so that's a good sign. So I think one of the things that I see after watching your podcast quite a bit is I see a lot of fear. It's not so much the topic of, what's going wrong with Canada. It's people think we're going to lose our Canadian identity. And I don't think that's really true. What I think a lot of the fear comes from is what happens if this actually goes forward. What kind of government are we going to have? I also see a lot of people lose their hats over the comment of 51st state. Being a Christian, the Bible, a lot of the Bible is put out in parables. So when you compare our Westminster system to the system that they have in America, and being a watcher of our committee meetings and the House of Commons, it's clear to see that Canada blows in the wind. It has been for 150 years, depending on the flavor of the government of the day. When you take a look at the checks and balances that the American system has of government, it's very productive. You can have those difficult conversations and lawmaking and policy making, and it really comes back to a constitution. Our constitution is written by the Crown, for the Crown, in the Crown's favor. As we watch CBC, our beautiful legacy news media, it's the Crown prosecution. It's the Crown's justice system. It's the Crown Senate. We all go back to when Mark Carney was appointed. Why do we even have elections in Canada? If our Governor General can do that, this isn't really a fight between us sitting in this room and the people that maybe haven't, It's pretty upsetting, pretty emotional times. We need to take a good look at our system of government that keeps us divided by design. This is all by design. This is not new. This has been around since there was a monarchy. History books are full of it. I just think that we need to come together, right? It's not about a fight between us, as I like to joke, the Nestors and the Cowboys, right? It's not about that. Everybody wants to live a life in its fullest with happiness, liberty, joy, everything that you can imagine that's going through your heads right now as I look out in the crowd. We just need to come together. This is not, it's great to talk about the details about all this. But at the heart of the matter is we're all the same. We're all Canadian. Right? We all have all different backgrounds of our ancestors that came over here. I'm Scottish. Right? There's Irish, there's Polish, there's Ukrainian. Right? And they all have stories. Right? And even our natives. One of my ancestors was J.J. Stewart.
Bob, I have to interrupt you for just 1 second. We do have to get through questions.
Sure.
So let me take your question, and then we'll have the conversation after. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to me. I get a little bit long-winded, and I am passionate about being Canadian.
Yeah, we know.
I would just like to ask you guys, what have you heard about, if this potentially goes through, what kind of government system are we going to have? Because that's the root of the problem, what created this tonight.
Well, the first thing I'll say is we didn't have a say in what type of government we have right now. So this is an opportunity for the first time in Canadian history for Canadians, for Albertans, to actually self-determine and decide the conditions of their own governance. In 1867, when we became a country, it wasn't because we filled rooms like this all over from sea to sea and asked people what kind of government they wanted and how they wanted their representatives or representation to look. It was a business deal done in England, passed in British Parliament, imposed on the Dominion of Canada. We didn't decide. And I would argue that that's why the system feels like and appears to be skewed towards protecting government rather than protecting people. It's because the people that wanted to be government, who wanted to govern, wrote the rules. So herein lies the opportunity for Albertans to be the first in Canada to self-determine, to put the guardrails on government, to tell government, these are your limits, and you're not giving us our rights, these are our rights, and you just have to respect them. So that's, you hit the nail on the head. The problem is systemic. It's the type of governance we're under, and Alberta sovereignty is the mechanism by which we change that.
I just want to add, it's difficult to say specifically what system we may or may not go into, going down that road to the point where we've voted, presumably, to become independent and held the Constitutional Convention to form the new nation. One thing I think we can say with confidence, though, is if we adopt the Westminster system, after going through all of this to get out of it, we deserve the crappy government we're going to get. So the world is our oyster, as Chris is saying. It's an incredible opportunity because we would have a chance to look at all of the systems around the world. What has worked? What hasn't worked? What safeguards have been in place in countries that do well? Which don't? And we could build something unique. I mean, maybe modeled on other systems, but taking the best of everything. It's really our chance to do something great and new. So we look forward to it that way. But to commit at this time and say it will be this or it will be that, I wouldn't be being truthful because we don't know yet. But now is the time to have the discussion. And at least that first part is kind of all agreeing and knowing what we don't want. That's a good start to begin with, and we'll move on from there.
Hi, thanks. We have the referendum to have a referendum, and then we have a referendum. And then we have negotiation with Alberta and the federal government. So my question is, do you think that our current UCP government administration would negotiate on behalf of the people of Alberta?
Well, I mean, I'm not in their heads, but I don't believe that a group who advocates for the status quo and campaigns against self-determination could effectively negotiate in good faith. That's my belief. So, you know, there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered, and even more going to be asked after the upcoming referendum. You know, if it goes one way, well, now we got to start thinking about, okay, well, if the will of the people is to pursue self-determination, are we going to allow a government or some people in government to get in the way? What is our or else? What are we going to do to get the things we want, right? But I don't think that our current government would be the right one to do it.
Yeah, looking at where things are right now, this opportunity this fall for that question, again, is as much as it's a question to move on further, it still is a mandate question. If we come out strongly, if we got 60% to pick option 2, we have given them a mandate very clearly. And we haven't just put Ottawa on notice, we've put Edmonton on notice. And there's already a lot of debate, and I think that's kind of cooled down with some people thinking they should try and tear that government out of power right now in Edmonton. I got a feeling that would just be a little bit too immediate and causing more damage than we would do good at this time. But if at that time they've been given a mandate like that and they still dig their heels in, then yeah, I guess it's time for the movement to shift to say, well, we better change who's sitting in the Premier's seat. But that would be their determination at that time. If there's one thing politicians like to do, it's save their own skin. And if it's been a big referendum and a large turnout of people came out to say, we want this, I assure you many of the politicians will be scrambling to get in front of that parade because they want to stay in on that mandate. Maybe not because of the right reasons, or maybe because they really always felt like they wanted to support independence, but it allowed them to come out of the closet. The first step of our road, and there's a lot, and as Chris said, if they're going to be this hardcore federalist, I can't see them being good negotiators for us later. But still, our first step right now is to get as strong a mandate as we possibly can in the question this fall. And there's still a lot more to be done after that, but that's sort of step one.
And remember, this upcoming referendum is a question on whether or not we want the government to pursue the legal process to put a proper question to us. And that's why I say a lot of questions are going to be answered. If we get an overwhelming response one way or another, we watch how the government responds, and we'll know pretty quick whether or not they're appropriate. I have a written question here. The question is, in your opinion, what are the solar panels and wind turbines doing? Well, let me expand that question a little bit. So I believe the question is around alternative energy, or maybe replacing oil and gas with so-called green energy. I believe that a lot of the policy that we've pursued, even as Canadians, not just Albertans, in the last 20 years, have not been science evidence-backed policies, but instead have been ideologically driven things based on emotions. I believe that if we're taking high-grade farmland and plastering solar panels all over it without really weighing the risks of doing so, I think that's irresponsible. If we're putting up windmills near people's houses and causing, like, we've seen some pretty nasty things come from this, right? The frequencies in that we didn't understand this, it's causing people harm, and it's killing a lot of birds. We didn't really weigh the risks to the benefit. Now, if you look at oil and gas, the benefits from oil and gas has moved us up from, I don't know what the metric was, it was 3% to 97% in quality of life. So our quality of life in all statistics shot dramatically and drastically upwards when we started using oil and gas. It was the single greatest thing to promote and encourage human flourishing that the world has ever seen. And I think a lot of that was ignored when we started allowing people to demonize the things that benefited humanity the most and start replacing them with things that were based on more ideological theories rather than reality. So, I don't know exactly what the wind turbines and panels are doing to people, to the environment, or things like that. I don't subscribe to know everything, but I can tell you that it's irresponsible to completely ignore the benefits of one energy source and only focus on the hazards, and then use that distinction to cast it aside and do something different. That's my position on that.
Most energy sources, if they're any good, it's simple enough to find out how. If we don't subsidize them, the good ones will rise to the top. If the solar and wind was any bloody good, we wouldn't have to pour billions of dollars of tax money into them. And they have their place. I'm not dissing the whole thing. I love the solar array on my fifth wheel. When I'm boondocking in the desert, it charges my batteries, but that's at a scale where it's useful to me. And I choose that as a private investor. I think it's worth it to me. There's no cost-benefit analysis that makes it look worthwhile to put a bunch of panels across good farmland that have a shelf life that will die off with a big... It's just not good. That's why they have to get billions in subsidies to get these things working. Likewise with the wind. Plus, the problem with both of those is if the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, they don't do anything. So you're still going to be burning natural gas or damming a river or burning some coal. It's a supplemental at best, and it always will be. And it may be, if the technology gets good enough and it gets cheap enough, it gets efficient enough, maybe it'll still be there as a good supplemental. Perhaps. I don't fight all technology. But until it's worth putting it in without subsidizing it, it's just a dog we got to get away from. As Chris said, it's ideologically driven, not by cost benefit, and it's got to stop.
So just so you folks know, I'm not playing video games on my phone. I'm actually watching the stream, and I'm trying to make sure that we catch the questions, because we've been accused of gatekeeping to questions just because I'm not in two places at once. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. There's a question from Andy here, and his question is, if separation is supposed to end Alberta being overruled by distant urban power centers, what exactly stops rural Alberta from eventually being overruled by Calgary and Edmonton, the same way Alberta says Ottawa overrules them now? And if the answer is simply our own government would listen better, then isn't that the exact same promise every centralized government already makes? And this is one for you, Cory.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. It gets right back to, if we were so stupid as to become independent and bring in the Westminster system again, we deserve the crappy government. That question is premised on us having the same system after having become independent. But it's still a good question, because there are systems that can recognize regional diversity. And when we talk about systems, I write about that in my book, and I've talked about it in other places. For example, I love the Swiss system. It's a small landlocked country. It's got 4 official languages, very diverse, very different groups of people within a small area, and 26 cantons, 26 provincial equivalents, but with a great deal of autonomy. And some of them are very socialist. Some of them are very capitalist. As I said, there's 4 different languages between all of them. Some have highly dense populations around Geneva and the bigger cities. Some are sparsely populated. And guess what? They're not fighting with each other. There's no independence movement. Canada, we can't even manage 2 languages. And the reason is because you don't have that centralized government system. You've allowed that authority to be brought down to the local level. So if we had a similar system, it doesn't have to be like Switzerland necessarily, but one that recognizes Edmonton's going to have different needs and wants than Lethbridge will, and Lethbridge is going to have different wants than Claresholm will, and Claresholm's going to have different wants than Barrhead will. And we got to allow those regions to have that local authority, bring the power down, because if we centralize it again, the questioner is right. Eventually the cities will dominate the rural areas, and these battles will just begin on a micro level. So we just have to make a better system, learn from what we've come from. Because yes, politicians will all act the same if we give them the authority, so let's not give it to them.
My question is about something I read today, that Premier Smith is going to be sequestering a panel to find out how much it costs to separate. Now, I know she already said something, probably a month ago or so, that was like $400 billion or something like that, right, for us to separate. So did you hear about this news today, or?
Yes,
Is
I
it
did.
old? Oh, okay.
And that's actually very exciting that she's doing that. And if it's done in good faith, it's going to show unequivocally that Alberta would be far, far better off economically not in Confederation. When I watched her talk about the 400, and it wasn't just the 400 billion, it was the 400 billion dollars that it would cost or may cost, and then the 50 to 75 billion dollars a year, I started scratching my head and I said, okay, wait a minute, I'm a high school graduate, but I'm not university educated, I'm not a math professor, and just off the top of my head, I know that number is not right. So I went and I did a bunch of research on it. I used Claude AI and ChatGPT and went on Statistics Canada and all sorts of things, and I wrote a trifold that's back there that all of you can look at, and it says, show me the other half of the ledger. And it gives as honest an account as I could come up with my limited resources as to what the economics would look like in independent Alberta. Now, this isn't, obviously, it's not an easy task to do, but information is available pretty easily online, and we can look and see what goes out from Alberta, what comes back in, and what share of federal services we pay for. So when people say you're going to have to pay for borders, newsflash, we already pay for that. We pay our share. Oh, you're going to have to pay for your share of international trade. Newsflash, we already do that. And more, right? So I would encourage you to pick up a copy of that, show me the other half of the bill, and read it. Challenge me if you think I'm wrong. Maybe send me a thumbs up if you think that it's well done and I'm right. But my point is, this isn't just a talking point. This is a real thing that we have to get to the bottom of, and I believe it is, no, not believe. I will say that it is absolutely irresponsible for any politician to start spewing assumptions for the purpose of making one group of people fearful of pursuing what they want to pursue. That isn't right from any politician, from any party. So it is a good thing that they're going to do it, and I'm excited to see the results, because I know if it's done in good faith, it's going to be very, what's the word? It's going to be a very positive piece of news.
Yeah, I'll just add a little, and I've been kind of a pretty staunch defender of Premier Smith, and pointing out that she never campaigned on being an independent supporter. She was a federalist. She doesn't have to take an independent stance. But I tell you, that rant when she went off about that $400 billion really ticked me off, because she knows better, and it was a disingenuous statement. The numbers, and she knows bloody well that they were BS. Of that, for example, she called it transitional costs. She's saying those would be the costs to get out. And then she said 170 billion of that would be our share of the debt. Okay, let's say we negotiated that share of the debt. She said that in that same rant. She'd prepared this, so she had a number of things she said were going to cost us. Well, let's say we took the 170 billion. Fine. Well, we have it already. We're just cutting our chunk off the credit card. That's not new. That's not transitional. So that was BS on the part of the Premier, and that pissed me off. I don't like being BS'd. And then she said we'd have to pay 25 billion a year because we'd be NATO members, and we'd have to do that to keep our military up to the standards of a 5% GDP commitment. There was more to her. She broke down that 400 billion on these statements. Again, a whole pile of assumptions that we would even join NATO. Canada's just got up to 2%. Why the hell would we be obligated to 5% even if we joined? It was just absurd and ridiculous. And I'm like Chris, I do want to see a proper, honest cost-benefit analysis done by some experts. Well, when I saw the Premier get off on that foot, I lost a lot of confidence that they're going to do this without BSing us. I hope it was just a moment that maybe she took one too many wake-up pills in the morning and got a little confused that day at the microphone. Because it's really not typically in character to be that bold of just going right away from the truth like that. So I really hope something good comes of it. I think she did get a heck of a lot of blowback out of that. So perhaps they'll reconsider things. I still want to maintain optimism because it, like Quebec, if the government puts these things forward, it'll give us a good basis.
Just one more thing before we take your question. If the government came back and said it's going to cost $400 billion to do this, I would say, okay, where do I sign? I would. And part of the reason for that is if they say, you know, if we do this, we're going to have our share of the debt is $175 billion. I would say, okay, what's it going to be next year? And if you're a fiscally responsible person of any capacity, if you're going to have to pay $175 billion this year, if you get out, if you wait till next year, it's going to be $200 billion. What do you want to do? Do you want to wait until you owe more or get out now? So these are things that they never talk about, and this is why it's important for Albertans to have these conversations. So when we hear them telling us these talking points, we can come back with some reality checks for them, so that they know that we're paying attention. And your question.
Hi, I have a two-part question. My first part will be for both of you, and then I have another question after, specifically for Chris. Hello, everybody. Just to give a little rundown of who I am, because it's going to be relevant. I am 50 years old next month. High school dropout, criminal record, blue-collar worker. You know, I've COVID times, I was making good money, etc. I'm not like struggling, despite my history. I was part of the 2022 border blockade protest. My Canadian flag still flies from my truck. My Canadian flag still flies from my truck more than 4 years later. I've never voted Liberal. I've never voted NDP in my life. My name is Brett Boyle. I took place in Chris's live stream last night. I presented a question via the live stream, which they mocked me, made fun of me, called me, they were derogatory towards me.
Who's they?
Both of you, because then Mr. Morgan this morning on his live stream, when I was just, for the record, asking questions. I was not swearing, I was not being mean, I was not being ridiculous. I'm just a guy. Never voted Liberal, never voted NDP, part of the border blockade protest. You guys both, tonight even, sit there and talk about how you want to bring people over, win people over, shift people's thoughts. Chris, yourself, say you want to have the difficult conversations with people that don't see the same. How can you sit there? Mr. Cory Morgan, this morning, you called me, you signaled me out in your live stream. I hope it's still up. You guys can all go check.
Yeah, I called you a peckerhead.
Yeah. You called me a leftard, a libtard, a peckerhead, etc. Your words, peckerhead. I want to know how you guys can be derogatory, demeaning, calling people names, insulting our military personnel, and actually think that you're going to win people over.
Okay, I'll interrupt you there. Nobody's insulting the military personnel. We can be both, absolutely be total dinks from time to time. I will admit that. I never claim to be perfect. If I go and I pull a transcript of that live stream, the way that you're framing questions was not necessarily conducive to actually wanting answers. I'll tell you that right now. And sometimes, time to answer people like we're going to today, who we know are not asking questions in good faith. I know that. I know that some of your questions weren't. And if you don't, I mean, if you're going to deny that, then our conversation's over, because
well, if
you're not willing to be
up,
honest.
everybody can go see for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's fine.
Yes, absolutely. There are times I use derogatory things. I call people names from time to time. I probably shouldn't do that. But at the same time, I don't just bend and kneel to people who are framing questions like that. I can tell when people are asking questions in good faith, like you are right now. What you're asking right now, this is in good faith. But when I can see people are fishing for answers or trying to trap in some sort of an ism, or making accusations that are completely untrue, like your accusation about us disrespecting the military, that is completely untrue. Both of us have said on many occasions that we don't have a problem with our service people. We have a problem with the way Confederation and Canada has treated them, and we want something better for them. I frequently talk about why I believe Alberta needs to chart its own course. One of the reasons is because every winter I hear on the news that more veterans have frozen to death on the streets of Edmonton and Calgary. I have a problem with these things. I respect our service people. I do not respect what the country has done to them, right? So, you made an accusation to me. I responded to that accusation in a way that you didn't like. Cory responded in a way you didn't like. But when you enter the public sphere in these things, as we do, you're not always going to get the answer that you want. And maybe sometimes you're even going to get called a name. I get called names all the time. And I get it. Emotions are high around this conversation. Thank you for wearing the hoodie, by the way. That's an awesome hoodie. I like to see you're supporting the Whistle Stop Cafe.
We'll get back to that for my second part.
Yeah. But, that's just the way it is. Neither Cory and I are politicians. We are completely average, imperfect human beings that do imperfect things from time to time. It does not mean that our cause isn't worthy. It doesn't mean that we don't actually want to talk to people. It just means that we're not perfect, and sometimes that's the response people get. And I will apologize if it hurt your feelings. But I'm less concerned about the feelings, and I'm more concerned about the information.
I just have a response to that, where I was asking about the flag and how the English Red Cross is there, which is literally symbolizing a British colony, and paying homage to that or respect to that, that wouldn't it make more sense if you want this freedom of independence from that to not use that flag? I didn't. You said I framed the question in a negative way. I don't understand how that's framing
it was
in a negative
different
way.
questions, but
and you didn't answer my question when I asked, how is it that you expect to win people over and bring people over when they see people like Cory Morgan on his live stream this morning calling me a left-tard, libtard, peckerhead, and I never voted Liberal or NDP in my life and was at the border blockade?
Okay.
How are you winning people over with that?
Let me answer the question about the flag. I do not share your interpretation or assumption on what that flag means. It doesn't mean that to me. It can mean that to you. It doesn't mean that to me. I will use this until we design another one. It doesn't mean colonialism for me. It's a St. George's cross. It represents somebody that stood up for what they believe in and were martyred for it. That's what it means to me. You may not share that, and that's why I said you're free to design your own thing, propose a flag, do whatever you want. But again, like that question, that's not, I don't understand how that question is getting us any closer to any kind of a solution. Like arguing about my use of a flag. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's a personal preference. Okay? So now I'm going to let Cory answer the other part.
Sure. Please, thank you.
And I don't use the term left-hard, so quit paraphrasing. I will go into, hey, I'm talking now. You've had your moment. I have a show that I run daily. I just want to give the context. A lot of people watch it. And it's my nature on it. I'm a grumpy host. If you're going to use the comment scroll and engage me provocatively, you'll get the kind of response from me that you got. You went on about Canada being genocidal. You went on about the Palestinian genocidal stuff. And then when I put it out, I'd been to Israel and Gaza. Oh, he admitted he's been to Israel. Kiss my ass. I'm a Jewish journalist who went to Israel. I'm not in the mood for conspiracy kooks who want to come in and ruin my chat thread during my live show. So if you're going to step into the middle of it, you're going to get slapped back. And you got it again tonight, peckerhead.
And yet, here I am.
And here you are.
Now.
I have as much respect for you now
thank
as
you.
I did this morning.
Because you're really answering... No. You're really answering the question of how you're winning people over with that sort of attitude. You're not.
Well, we're not going to... He's not going to win you over. That's that.
Second part of my question to Chris, sir. I was part of the border blockade in 2022. I was sitting at the border watching you drive home, abandoning those people in Ottawa. I want to know, when the tough gets going and the chips are down, how are we supposed to be assured that you're not going to tuck tail and run again when tough things get
You,
tough,
sir,
right?
are talking out your ass and you have no idea what you're talking about.
I was at the border watching
You didn't see me flipping out in that truck. That I wasn't there for that. You didn't hear me arguing with my girlfriend and arguing with my other girlfriend, Carrie, about leaving so he could get back to work so he wouldn't lose his job. You think I wanted to leave? I wanted to get arrested in a second province for standing up for what I believe in. You have no idea what the hell you're talking about, and that's why Cory called you a peckerhead, because you come into these conversations and you make these assumptions and accusations to people like me who have actually risked a lot of shit, and thank you for taking the time and the risk that you took for being in Coots, but don't you dare assume that you have any damn clue about my motivations for leaving Ottawa. That is a very sore spot for me, and I regret that every day. I wish that I had just somehow got them on a plane, even though they couldn't fly because the fucking government wouldn't let them, and I stayed there to be with those people. So thank you for your questions. I'll continue talking to about this afterwards, but we're done with this line of questioning.
Obviously struck a nerve, and you can have your merch back. You're not a leader.
Thank you. You don't deserve to wear it. Sometimes it gets spicy, but that's why we talk.
Hi, it's my turn.
Good night, sir.
It's my turn.
Good night.
Sit down.
Good.
Bye. So, I'm going to try and make this a little bit lighter. Your circles that you guys see and walk in, the current government, like Danielle Smith, for example, the position that she's in coming into this environment, how much do you think is just placating to play the game to get us to where we need to be to make this happen? Just to keep all parties happy. She's got frickin' Nenshi Walrus Boy on one side, and she's got Jason Kenney and those guys on the other, and she has to have this thing of understanding. What is it?
Memorandum of understanding. Yeah.
The memorandum of
the
understanding.
memorandum of understanding. And so she's got a lot of moving pieces that she has to keep happy, on top of unions, on top of everyone else. When it died.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear myself.
Here. I'll give you this one.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I'll trade you. They just at the back. They want to hear you. So.
Can you hear me now? So with all these moving pieces, when we get to this, is some of her patriotism and stuff like that, is that a little bit of show? Is she kind of she's walking a delicate line as far as I can tell. And how much do you guys see in your circles that is just kind of getting us to our end game and then taking it from there depending on the outcome? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of see where you're going. As soon as the batteries are changed,
Yeah.
I guess all my
Okay.
swearing must have wore it out. But no, it's a good question. We'll get to it.
Just repeat the question.
Oh.
So that she can, and then you can carry on.
Sure. So I'm just kind of paraphrasing a bit. You're just wondering, how much of it is it perhaps Premier Smith moving things along, kind of playing both sides? I think there's a lot of that. That's part of why I've been very much an advocate of not having a partisan approach to the independence movement. Because when you're running a party, particularly when you're in power, you do have to pander to a whole bunch of different directions. I don't think she's been doing it effectively lately. I can't get into her mind as to where she is on federalism or not. I don't know. She might be a closet independent supporter. She might be as true blue a federalist as she's saying she is right now. I was kind of supportive of things like the MOU in the sense of just so she can do it and show we tried in good faith. It was an absolute failure, because every time you try something like that and you fail, you create more independent supporters. There's a lot of people say we want to try everything first. Well, she's running through everything and nothing's working. So there's a bit to that. Whether it's purposeful on our part or not, I don't know. I can't get into her mind. But I mean, where it's going now, my thoughts are she overcorrected. I think their internals are showing a bad bump right now. And they panicked and they felt now we suddenly got to become hardcore federalists to bounce that back. Because like I said, these politicians are slaves to the polls. And that's part of why she suddenly swung to one side. That's my theory on it. Same with this handout of money all of a sudden. It worked for Ralph Klein. Let's just give everybody a bit of cash and maybe we'll get a bump in the polls. So it's reducing my faith in the long run with things, but I still think she's done a lot of good things in there. And I hope, if she can bump off one way, she can bump back the other later. But we've got to start watching our government pretty closely.
It's about time we start watching our government closely. You're not going to take your shirt off, are you? Okay.
Thank you for the entertainment.
Go ahead.
Okay. What do you think the problems with the Native people's going to be? And how are we going to convince them it's going to be a better thing for them?
Well, I don't know if it's with Native people. I think it's with a select group of Native people that have a problem with not keeping the status quo, maybe because the status quo has served them very well. At the back, again, there's a trifold we put out, and it's got some information about that. And it leads with, in a recent poll, 46% of First Nations people polled agreed that they wanted Alberta independence. That's a big number. That's like 14% or 13% higher than the provincial average. So why is it that First Nations people want to change from the status quo more than non-First Nations people? Maybe because it's really been worse for them. I also wrote a blog at whistlestoptruckstop.ca, and it's called Why Independence Would Benefit First Nations People More. If you read that blog, you'll read some things and see some statistics that are heartbreaking. I mean, if there's any group of people in Alberta that need a change, it's our First Nations brothers and sisters. So the problems, they're experiencing a lot of problems right now. There are some who are experiencing like very, very big benefits to what's going on. And I think we just have to somehow get the conversations there. The people that want things to stay the same, they gatekeep and they don't allow the conversations to come to the places where they need to go. But at least we know through that polling that it is reaching people. So we just keep talking about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of covered by Chris. It is a big issue, though. Some of how things will work, Keith Wilson breaks it down quite well about the options that might happen if there was an independence vote, because the treaties kind of make an exceptional little portion of land within the province, and they might have to make decisions then individually if they're going to take part with the independent Alberta, or if perhaps they would maintain a relationship with Canada in an unusual hybrid, or it would be an awkward arrangement to make, but there's those things to look at. But we do have to watch a lot of the misinformation related to it and that too. There's been a lot of rights or land, possession myths put out there and what the treaties may or may not mean. And one thing I've kind of liked is this independence discussion has really brought a lot of treaty discussion to the fore, because treaties used to be really mysterious documents. Nobody ever read them. We relied on lawyers and academics to tell us what was in them. Now you can go online, you can read them, and there's actually not much in them. They're pretty basic. They don't confer all of these rights and things that people have always thought they did. They actually mostly delineate what the extents of the reserve are, and they say very clearly 100 times over that they give up all claim and title to every other part of the province and the country in exchange for some of these things. So over 98% of Alberta is actually forever ceded land as per the treaties. It's not saying we should just disrespect and disregard the implied rights or things that are going on in there. But we got to start having a frank discussion about what that actually confers, and there's not a real veto authority, and I think we've given this false authority to a lot of chiefs who in reality should be more like municipal leaders, though it's a special status, it's different. We're going to have to be sensitive and cognizant, but we've also got to start getting realistic and stop letting actually some of the activists and chiefs push us around on this stuff, because it really is throwing a loop into people's minds. But it shouldn't be a veto stopping us from pursuing independence.
Regarding freedom of choice, will we have the freedom to own and carry long guns and handguns without restrictions that the Canadian government has put on us today?
I'm going to begin by asking a question, like I usually do. If you don't like our federal firearms policies and legislation, as an Albertan, what are we going to do about it?
We ignore them.
Well, there is that. There is the Premier did actually mention that she was just going to direct the RCMP not to enforce the gun grabs, right?
Yes.
And that's great that, she'd want to stand up like that. But what she failed to realize is was that in doing that, if we still don't comply, we become criminals. And then the federal government can do things like take our passports or, all sorts of interesting things. So it's not all without risk. What I'm getting at is that right now there's not really much we can do about it. We can try and fight it in the Supreme Court, but that takes years. Meanwhile, a bunch of us become criminals. On the other hand, an independent Alberta, we would get to decide how we're going to handle that. Do we want to have like a Second Amendment type thing in our Alberta Constitution? Do we want to have self-defense as a constitutionally enshrined thing? Or would we rather have a nanny state that doesn't allow us to have knives? I don't know which way Alberta's going to vote, but I know that it's going to be our decision for the first time ever. So if you want my opinion, I would advocate for Second Amendment type rights where we could be treated as responsible citizens and we could own whatever firearms we wanted. However, I would also advocate for those that committed offenses using firearms have much, much more drastic and severe consequences than they do now.
I agree. Good. Now, for the people that are forming the new government, what part do they see God having in that constitution or whatever you form?
Well, Cory and I differ a little bit on this, but we're kind of aligned mostly. So we both agree that the Western civilization was built on Judeo-Christian values.
Exactly.
Right? I believe that the supremacy of God should be with the rule of law in our new constitution. Why? Because human beings are not perfect. I mean, look at me and Cory. We're two of the most imperfect men on the planet. Sometimes we call people peckerheads, right?
We learned that tonight.
Yes. We're not perfect. So we need to set our sights and we need to look to something greater than ourselves if we're going to do something as bold as shape the laws that govern us. Our laws that govern us should be, the foundation should be based on something more than us. And I would suggest that God's law is that something more that we should be pursuing. On a personal note, I believe that a lot of the problems that we're experiencing in society, they're not political problems. And that's why politicians haven't fixed them. If you read any of Ted Byfield's work, he describes the problems that Canada faces is not a right and a left thing. It's we're pursuing God and a godly path, or we're adopting secularism and rejecting God. And that's where he said that society has kind of gone astray. We started pursuing things that aren't geared towards sanctity of life, human flourishing, and that type of thing. And instead, we pursued this secular ideology where truth is relative. So on a personal note, I think that's where society needs work, and then the politicians get in front of it. But to answer your question, I believe that we should restore the supremacy of God in the rule of law and base our foundations on what made Western civilization what it is today.
Yeah, I'm a little more on the secular side, but that's, it's not saying that it shouldn't be in or involved or it hasn't had an impact or influence. I'll give a bit of backstory, and I don't hide things when I'm online with other stuff. I've talked about that on my show. I've been through recovery. I've been sober for quite some time now. A large part of that foundation, though, is meetings where you wrap yourself around dealing with a higher power. And as a basically agnostic Jewish man with a room full of people who are Christian, you kind of have to work with your own definition of a higher power. But it's essential to know that there's something more, something of a basis, something bigger and something better to help you along and through that. I think the risk is if you get too specific, though, in entrenching. I mean, having a God-based basis in a constitution is fine. We just don't want to start drilling down and getting a little too specific, though, about what particular faith it is, because then we start scrapping, even within different Christian denominations or other things like that. The supremacy of God can cover a whole lot of things. We just got to watch when we start parsing it out. Well, yeah, but that's your God and that's my God. Then we get in trouble. But I don't have a problem with the entrenchment of that in a constitution as a broad principle for sure.
Thank you.
Whoops.
That's okay.
Great. I don't know, can you hear me? Yeah. I don't know if this is relevant to tonight's talks, but I listened to Facebook discussions, and yesterday someone said that if you change insurance companies, that your premium will go up 40%. Is this fear-mongering, or is it true? And this person said, thanks to the UCP policy voted a couple of years ago. And do you think this is true?
You're saying something that somebody said if you change insurance companies, it'll go up 40% because of, well, I changed it recently and that didn't happen to me. So I guess that's all I could say to that. There's been some insurance things like no fault and things they've been fighting over. I know lawyers and insurance companies are battling over that, but I don't know about that particular issue. I can speak to my own though and know that no, that's not the case when I've changed insurance companies anyways.
Well, quite a few people that responded, they did say that their insurance went up 40%. And the other person said thanks to the UCP.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. It didn't happen to me, that's all I can say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I can say that we have a problem in this province with insurance. It's absolutely ludicrous what we're paying, like completely unreasonable. And, you know, this is I don't know what the exact solution is, but I think it requires some sort of regulatory intervention or something, but I'm not the guy to advocate for what that would be. There's a couple questions from online I'll get to before people think we're ignoring them. From Wrong Planet. Sometimes we know what they're trying to do just with the name. How does the separatist movement, in quotation marks, plan on persuading the federal government and or provinces to agree?
I'm presuming that question's about if we get to the point of a positive vote and a Clarity Act question and it moved on to the negotiation period. And that's where we get different interpretations. Because theoretically, yeah, the Constitution will have to be changed because a province is leaving it, and that takes that formula of 70% and so on. But it also says that the government's supposed to be negotiating the exit of the province in good faith. If 7 provinces and such are constantly digging their heels in and saying it's not going to happen, then they aren't negotiating in good faith, and we will have a unilateral declaration of independence. We're going to play by the rules until they won't let the rules work for us anymore. And then it's their problem now, not ours.
And a follow-up from Wrong Planet. They ask, so when does Cory Morgan and Christopher Scott stop talking and allow others to speak? Well, as you can see, we allow others to speak even when what they're saying is not, what's the word? I don't know. I mean, you saw, we let people speak even though we're obviously not on the same page and obviously not going to agree. Now, you know, in situations like that, looking back, I wish I could have been calmer. I'm not specifically a calm person, but sometimes that's what happens here. Like this was a little bit different. I mean, when people accuse you of things like what that gentleman accused me of, that's not. We're no longer pursuing solutions and coming together for common cause. Now it's like it's just I don't know what it is, trying to get a reaction or trying to bring down for some reason. Like why? I've always tried really hard to do what I know is right, even though I fail all the time. And I tell people this: if I'm not perfect, don't follow me. If you think I'm perfect, if you want perfection, I'll introduce you to my friend Jesus of Nazareth. That's the only perfect man. But, you know, we do allow others to speak, and we do allow people to ask questions that we know are not really super appropriate questions, and we do our best to answer them as well. And that just is par for the course with anything like this, I guess.
Okay, I have a couple of things to say, but I'm going to address what you're just speaking about, Chris, first. No one in this room or in this community or in this province has the right to come in to a meeting of people here who have come to learn, to understand, and to walk up to this mic and hold that audience as hostage while they insist on their own agenda. So I will not do that to you guys, and thank you for not letting that go any further. And I have a couple things I'd like to talk about. There's lots of people in all different groups across our province who have been working toward this. And I know that you two boys both recognize that and appreciate it. And so I'd like to bring a little attention to one group, and I'm going to tell you that I'm not totally in favor of them, but I like something they're doing. It's the Alberta Women's Independence Network. And those two gals are going to take each question that is coming up on the 2019 vote and bringing it up and talking about it. And because there's so much wording, I call it word salad, but there's so much different wording on it, that it's hard for people to understand what it means. So they're making an open situation for us to review those questions before 2019. So please, if you have the opportunity to go through those questions one by one and have a little look at it, it's going to prepare us for October. And so that would be the part that I wanted to make sure you were aware of. And the other thing is I want you to know that we have built a float out of the Vulcan area. It was at their parade last Saturday, well received. There's also one being put together here in the Claresholm area, thanks to a lot of volunteers. And those floats are made more like a pop-up. So they're going to be able to bring them out to events in your communities. So if you have an event happening in your community that you think you would like to have one of these units show up with all kinds of Alberta flags, please either let Lorna know, let myself know. Even if you let these boys know, they'll get the message back to me. Let's get this out because we have to show what we're doing. And the last thing I want to say, because I said I'm not going to hold you hostage, but these boys had the great piles of those 3 trifolds back there. It's hard to step outside what we're used to doing. But if every one of us leaving this door takes 3 more of those and make sure they go somewhere, someone's going to see them. And I'm going to tell you one of the best places to leave them lay, right inside your post office. You know, in our post offices, we have that shelf where people throw their flyers sometimes. There's those horrible cards that tell us who has left our community. That's a really good place to leave those trifolds. Someone's going to pick them up. Leave it at Tim Hortons. Leave it wherever. If you don't feel like you want to hand it to somebody, put it where it's visible. Visibility is what's taking us forward. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bonnie. You know, when I first saw you in my Facebook feed, I was very concerned. But I found out you're the good Bonnie Henry, so thank you for that. Yeah, those trifolds are great conversation starters, and that's what this is about. All of the things Bonnie mentioned, including Kathy Flett's initiative, the Alberta Women's Independence Network, it's all about talking to each other. Like Kathy says, if you want to talk about these things, call me, I'll come to your house, and we'll just have a meeting with whoever you want. And we just have these conversations where we're at. It's not necessarily just about coming to rooms like this and listening to people like me and Cory. It's about you folks becoming ambassadors for what you believe in and then having the conversations with the people that don't come here. That goes for the gentleman that asked about the younger generation. He mentioned there's lots of gray hair. I see lots of white and shiny heads too. But that doesn't mean that the younger people aren't interested in these conversations. It just means they're busy doing young people things right now. And it becomes our responsibility, and I say a moral obligation, to bring this conversation to them, right? That's how we change the world. We don't do it by only bringing people to rooms. We do it by bringing the conversation that we have in the room out into the world and making sure everyone gets a chance to speak, even if we don't like what they're saying.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you for coming out to these town halls. I think this is absolutely a wonderful way to get the information. I was wondering, you spoke about the youth and them. What about the grade 12s? What about those that are going to be eligible to vote here? Is there something that has been, or have you been allowed to approach them in the school-wise or create events where grade 12s can come and ask these questions? Because this is important to their future.
Well, I think that would be fantastic. We haven't done any specific initiatives for that. Our initiatives are generally, we just open them to everybody and hope that younger people show up, and sometimes they do, of course. One of the people that's working with Let's Talk Alberta, he is trying to set up meetings within universities. and specifically speaking to, liberal-minded university students. The last group he spoke to, I think they were all NDP voters, all first generation, or all new Canadians, and he was talking about some of these things. And he led with, I am a married, white, Christian man, and these are the things I believe in. So when we speak about these things, that's my perspective. And I hope you can appreciate that. And they're like, wow, usually people try and hide those things, right? And then the conversations are difficult. But he's trying to do that, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that I've thought of doing. But if there's anybody that wants to carry that torch and bring those conversations to places where young people are, like, even into a grade 12 classroom or a university campus or something like that, I would encourage you to do it. We can help facilitate that in any way we can. But yeah, it's an initiative thing, and if you have the initiative, we'll help you do it. I can't wait to get to I got to get to the good questions here now.
Isn't that what has got us in trouble before?
Sorry, I lost it. The plan. Did I ask the question about the plan already? What's the plan? So there was a question in here. Basically, it was, what is your plan? And if you can't tell us the plan, then why would anybody support supporting Alberta independence? And again, I answer with the question, what's the plan right now? How are Albertans or Western Canadians being involved in the plan going forward for their provinces and for Canada as a whole? Well, we're really not. We're kind of in the bus at the back or the middle, whatever, but we're not in the driver's seat. We're not even advising the driver, really. They're just taking us wherever they want to go. So the idea that we have to know every single little detail before we make a decision on whether or not we're going to be the ones that decide the details is ridiculous. I think about, way back when there's a group of people in Norway and they got their cool wooden boats with the oars and the things, and they're looking at the ocean. They're like, we don't know what's out there. Should we go explore, or are we going to worry about every single little detail and plan, and unless we know exactly what's over there, we're not going to go? Well, no country would ever be created. Nothing would ever be invented. Nothing would ever be done. That's just not the way it works. However, if you want a plan, our friends in Quebec have been working on this plan for 60 years. They have a library full of plans. And there's a group of Albertans who have access to that, and they're using that to build our plan. So it's not like we're starting from scratch. People have been contemplating provincial sovereignty for 6 decades at least. And really, what do we have to do to implement their plan? Change the name of the province, maybe change some sections on borders and things like that. But by and large, it's very similar to what Quebec is doing, and we do have that plan.
I'll just expand a bit, just because I talked earlier about how to work with people, talk with people, and I showed my real sweetheart side earlier. And but when you get somebody going into whataboutism, you don't know necessarily their motivation. It could be somebody genuinely concerned, but often online and sometimes in person, they'll start you down the garden path. Answer this question. Well, I won't do it if you don't answer this question. Then don't answer this question. They'll keep you going for hours. They don't want to go where you're going. They're just trying to hold you up. And when you get an ultimatum, I want to know what the whole plan is right now, or it's not reasonable. Well, you're not dealing with somebody reasonable. So sometimes we just spent 3 hours talking about many specific things and so on, but to cover the entire plan in one question, we're not being reasonable anymore. The plan has to be covered, and as Chris was saying, there's a lot of things to do. But we just got to watch, I guess, the nature of some of the questions and why they're coming from some people. Are they genuinely looking for answers, or are they perhaps just trying to lob a turd into the punch bowl just to screw up with the discussion?
Go ahead.
My turn.
Yeah.
Hi. Good meeting tonight. I got a question regarding timing of change after a yes vote. My understanding is that everything will remain exactly as it is going forward until there's the shift to an independent Alberta. We still pay Canadian income tax. All our Canadian rules and laws still apply until the negotiations are complete to reduce some anxiety over transition.
That's absolutely
That's correct. Everything stays
That's
exactly the same.
absolutely right. The day after a yes vote, even if we had a Clarity Act vote and we had 75% support, say, the next morning, everything would still be exactly the same. Your government entitlements would still be coming and your taxes would still be going out. The same judges would be in charge. The same politicians would be in place. This would be a process.
And this could go on for several years, whatever it takes to...
Whatever it takes. I would hope not several years,
Right, yeah.
but it would certainly wouldn't happen in just a few months. There's a lot of things in transition. There'd have to be a constitutional convention. But it's a good question because some of the fear that people are putting out are saying, well, the day after, we wouldn't have air traffic controllers, or your pension check won't show up, or things like that. It's not that sudden, and it's good to remind people of that. That's not how it works. So thank you.
Wrong planet. You might actually be on the wrong planet. I'm going through the comments here. There's a lot of comments on the stream. Lots of people. It seems like kind of aggressively attacking Alberta energy, talking about the hundreds of billions of dollars that we pour into oil and gas every year. I'm not going to spend any time on that stuff, really, folks. So if you have questions about the benefits of oil and gas to the economy, you can do some internet research first. We're not going to talk about that tonight. Another question about how are we going to plan, or how are we going to persuade the federal government and the provinces? My answer, very short, we're not. I'm not interested in persuading them. I'm interested in negotiating with them. That's it. If Alberta decides that we want to self-determine, we don't have to ask anybody's permission or get anybody to agree with us. It's something that we do, and Quebec knows that all too well. Wrong Planet asked, do you guys even look at the comments? Yes, I do. I just ignore you lots. Sorry. Lots of stuff about the plan. We already talked about that. And where's the last little bit? Sorry, they've got so many things on there, it's hard to find the actual questions. And again, how does the movement plan on persuading the federal government? We've answered that so many times.
That's getting back to what I've talked about, where some people, I think they're trying to distract rather than being genuine.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's it for the online questions, unless I missed some in the slew. For some reason, the live stream has way more people watching tonight than usual. I'm not sure why that is, but it's good. Is there any more questions, folks? Okay, well then I guess we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for attending tonight. Thanks for coming and enjoying some delicious pierogies. I should mention that there are leftover pierogies in the back, and we always package them up in to-go containers. You can take them by donation. It really helps us out. And these events are grassroots funded. We do not get checks from Trump. We don't get money from Vladimir Putin. Sometimes I get merchandise returned.
Not any foreign investment?
Not any foreign investment.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it isn't. However, Let's Talk Alberta is not a TPA. You can donate to us from anywhere you're at. There are no limits, nothing like that. So feel free to donate what you want, when you want. And if you don't want to, then please don't. It's totally up to you. But remember that it is funded by you guys, and we certainly appreciate the support. Thank you very much for coming. We'll stick around for a little bit and answer any questions that you want to. Oh, Lorna has a. Lorna, you can close, Lorna.
Yeah, okay. I just want to thank these two guys for coming tonight. I really appreciate Chris and Cory, everything you always have to say, and we're going to win this. We have to come together. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take your neighbor. It's going to take whoever we can get on board. So take some pamphlets. Ask your neighbors to follow these guys online, because every day they have something new, and that's what it's going to take to win this. So thanks a lot, guys.
soon as you start going, I knew exactly what to
Oh,
advise you
man.
today on the show. And the comments he was going, like, there's no reason he was
Well,
there.
I could feel your vibration, and I knew that there was something he wasn't talking
Oh,
about.
he was going on the anti-traditional works. Like, not anti-traditional, he's really not for that, but he's hung up on conspiracies. And just,
Well, and I think way more than that, because they spun that thing that I left because I was scared when I fed, and I knew they were coming.
wow, that's where he got into me when I mentioned, well, I've been to Israel. And I was being reasonable still. You know, I saw Gaza, I saw devastation. Oh, you're admitting you've been there. Like, hey, yeah, it wasn't a secret.
No, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, fun. I'll give him one piece of credit. He showed up in person. Most of the online ones that never do that.
No, that's yeah.
Take my chair down.
Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure.
Coming out. It's great to hear you all the time and watch you online quite a bit. That's really good. I just have a little comment. I was going to say it, but I think I better not. It might have been after.
Just a second. Oh, I had some weird feedback going on.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm not sure how I get it to stop.